This feels a little awkward. This is the first time I've been on this side of the board here. So this is a good setup. So appreciate you guys being here. Paul just gave me the thumbs up. He can hear me. So this is for the RFP for our food service contract. I think most of us know each other in the room, but I'm going to do some introductions. To my left, Jeff McGinnis is our school board attorney. Natasha, part of the committee. My name is Grant Meyer, assistant superintendent over operations. We have Dr. Small, who's the principal of Destin Middle School. We have Julie Perry, who is our CFO. Mary McGowan is up here on the board, and she takes care of all board members and items related to the board. So I see we have purchasing and Vince and Shannon here, and from food service, Steve Anderson and Cindy. I appreciate you guys being here. And we open this up to the public or anybody else that wanted to be part of this. We'll be here as long as we need to. So housekeeping, this is our temporary boardroom and our training room. We do have restrooms right down this hall here if you exit the back door. And we will get going. All right. So today is March 25th, and it is 9 o'clock. And this is started the RFP, and I will call this meeting to order. At this time, I'm going to turn over to Mr. McGinnis and go over some of our sunshine laws.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and first I want to thank the committee members for participating in this process to assist the school board in making this important decision. As a committee that's been appointed by the school board, it's important for the committee members to understand that means that this committee is operating under the provisions of the Florida Sunshine Law and also the Florida Public Records Law. And how that affects you is to let you know that you should only be communicating with each other as committee members in one of these advertised public meetings. Please don't have any communications with each other outside of an advertised meeting under this process. Also, you should not have any communications with any of the vendors that have responded to this proposal outside of a formal meeting setting like this. The Public Records Law applies to you in regard to the fact that as you make notes and fill out your scoring sheets, those all will become part of the permanent record of this solicitation process. So we would remind you of that as you are making notes and other things. Those will become public records that will be part of what purchasing maintains in this process. Another important fact this morning is we need to confirm with you publicly for the record. Each of you have seen the various firms that have responded, and we need to confirm that you have no individual conflict of interest with any one of these firms. I know you've already been given forms to fill out by purchasing, and Mr. Wyndham has those. But for the record today, Ms. Perry, do you have any conflict of interest with any of the vendors?
No, I do not.
Dr. Small, do you have any conflicts of interest with the vendors?
No, sir.
Mr. Meyer?
I do not.
Okay. And Natasha, do you have any conflicts?
No, sir.
Okay. So for the record then, the members that are present have no conflict of interest with any of the vendors that have proposed. The next thing I want to talk about is the role and responsibilities of this committee. You've been appointed by the school board to receive and evaluate these proposals. Ultimately, your job is to narrow down the list of vendors to 3 and put them in a ranked order that you would recommend to the school board for them to consider, and that ranked order would be for the purpose of contract negotiations. So in essence, when you finish your process and you get it down to 3, you will number them, and the top firm is the firm that the school board, if they accept the recommendation, would direct us to try to negotiate a contract with first. And if that didn't work, we would then go to the second firm. So at the end of all your work, that'll be your ultimate product to the school board is a recommendation of 3 firms in ranked order for contract negotiations. The purpose of the meeting today is for you as a committee to discuss the proposals and how you want to proceed. The most important decision probably today is for the committee to decide when we get there if you want to conduct interviews of vendors, and if so, do you want to invite all the vendors to come in and make presentations? Do you want to begin shortlisting? So that's kind of going to be up to the committee today, and that's the result that that needs to come out of this meeting is how you want to handle moving forward with the evaluation process. Any questions I can answer for you? Okay, Mr. Chairman, that concludes what I need to say.
Thank you, Mr. McGinnis, and we appreciate you being here and the history you have with the school district, so we're in good hands. At this time, Vince, do you want to talk about the proposals?
Just in a second. The person reviewed all proposals received and determined all were to be all responsive. Each of you have a copy of a checklist here, and this work we went through and checked everything off that was required from RFP. So everybody we received a proposal from is determined responsive. Now, as far as the committee, usually we'd ask them to make a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if the purchasing department is recommended to you that all the proposals be found responsive, which means they will all be considered valid and here before you, and if the committee agrees with that based upon the record that's been presented, we'd ask you to entertain a motion to declare all of the vendors as responsive to the RFP.
Any questions or discussion on that? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Dr. Small motions.
I
Do you have a
second.
second? Julie Perry, second. So,
And this motion is to declare all the vendors that have responded as responsive to the RFP.
any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. None opposed? Okay. Passes.
Okay.
Anything?
At this point, you guys are open for any discussion. You, of course, want to discuss the, the presentation decision. So at this point, you guys can go from there.
Thank you.
It's open meeting.
Thank you, Vince. So at this point, and I would suggest there were 7 companies, and they all submitted complete packages, and they were I was very impressed with each of these. I would think that this board and knowing the school district and the time that they put in to submit those packages, I think I would recommend that we would entertain to hear from each one of these vendors. That's just my thoughts. Any discussion or questions or difference of opinion on that?
You want to hear from all 7?
I would suggest that we hear from all 7, yes.
I agree. I'll make a motion that we hear from all 7. Do we do that at this point?
We can, we absolutely can. Do we need any further discussion on that? You feel? All right, so we jumped right to it, so.
You need a second to that motion.
I do have some other questions. Though.
Yeah, and we'll get into some.
And as soon as the motion's on the floor, then you can have some other questions and discussion.
That's okay. So the motion from Julie Perry is to hear each vendor, give them each an opportunity to have an oral presentation. That was the motion. Natasha was the second. Any further discussion? We can take it to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. So that would pass to hear each of the vendor, which would be 7 different companies.
Mr. Chairman, now I'd suggest that we let Mr. Wyndham just discuss with you kind of the process we might follow to get all that scheduled and talk about how long we'll give each vendor, and he can tell you what's routine in those matters, and then the committee can decide if that's how you want to proceed procedurally.
Thank you. Vince?
Okay. Based on what we've done in the past, the committee usually would have a 10-minute setup period, 30-minute presentation, and 15-minute Q&A for each vendor. That's basically, if you go that route, you would have 5 of these scheduled for next Tuesday, April 1st. You have 2 the following April 2nd, the following morning, and then that give you the afternoon of April 2nd to make your final scoring and go from there.
So to recap, that's next Tuesday and Wednesday, April 1st and April
Already
2nd.
scheduled,
We would
right.
hear the oral presentations.
Correct.
They would have a 10-minute setup. a 30-minute presentation and 15 minutes for
Q&A from you guys.
Q&A for us.
Directly to the
So,
vendors.
so an hour and 10 minutes, basically, for each vendor. And you said we would have a full day on Tuesday, a half day on Wednesday.
Right, and I'd leave you the afternoon if you chose to go to
Correct.
final scoring at that point.
Yeah, you'll probably use the afternoon because you'll need to do your final scoring and
Yes,
ranking and go
yes.
through all that process.
Any questions or discussions on that schedule or proposed schedule?
That's actually
do-
55 minutes per.
Oh,
vendor.
55.
Yeah, right.
Okay. All
Total.
right, so one thought is maybe that's too much time? Thoughts?
I think the Q and A, maybe, 15 minutes, Q and A, if we need to shorten it by a few minutes, that would be the area I would take time away. You want the companies to have enough time to set up,
That's right.
and you want them to present-
Transition.
give them time to present all their information, so if we needed to deduct any time, I would suggest the Q and A.
And you don't have to, if we set the schedule up that way, you don't have to use the entire 15 minutes. It's just available if you need it. If you're through with questions, you can conclude with that vendor and move on.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I'm in favor of just keeping the
Ms.
schedule
Perry?
as proposed.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I will notify all companies. What we'll do, we'll draw names out of a hat later today, and that'll be an order.
Okay.
And we'll notify each company of their, time slot.
Is this something we have to vote on, or we just
I'll take it
accept
from
that
you.
schedule and you'll be
Yep.
in contact with the vendors?
Yeah, I think for
Exactly.
the record, if there's consensus at the committee, that's the process then that Mr. Wyndham will set up for you.
Any, okay, that sounds good.
Okay?
Next Tuesday and Wednesday. And the order you said would draw
We'll draw that.
a random
Right.
draw.
Right.
Okay? All right, I think that's good.
Now, Mr. Chairman, remember, in the packages that Mr. Wyndham's office has given you, you've each got the scoring evaluation sheets. And that's what we will be asking next week for you to complete, one for each vendor. And at the end of the day, we will be having you announce, and I'll do a master tally of all of those to get down to the top three based upon all your scores, okay? I would just suggest that if you begin doing some initial, just from your review of the proposals, if you have some initial ideas as you're looking at that, that's fine, but you probably don't want to permanently mark anything until you've heard the proposals and the questions, and then at that point, we'll give you plenty of time to do your final scoring after all that's been concluded, okay?
Any questions on that? That's a great point. I think we would want to hear from each vendor
Sure.
and have that opportunity to ask questions before any final voting.
Absolutely. Mr. Wyndham, for their benefit, will you be doing the standard scoring on the price element of everything?
Yes, I'll give you the points for all the pricing. Once you go final scoring, which we'll assume will be the end of that second meeting.
Second day.
I'll give that information, and then Steve will give you information on your menus, on part A of your menus.
I just say that so committee don't, as you're looking through them, don't be struggling with how many points do I give for pricing or menus, because the staff will recommend to you a standard score that they calculate based upon the responses for you to put on your sheets for that.
It's a great point. I think that may be one of the discussion points, if we get to that point, is looking at the scoring sheet that was provided. Was there any questions with each of those categories? So the first category was, just to Mr. McGinnis's point, was the total fixed meal charge that will essentially be put together through Vince.
That's correct. Because that's based upon just the numbers.
That's right.
It's
Based on
a
formula. That's
right.
mathematical
Yes.
formula.
Yeah. So going through the other categories, from the menus, there was 2 different parts. 3, marketing. Was there any questions on how each category is scored? Or any thoughts on how it's scored? So,
I had a question on number 6, experience of on-site management company staff. It appeared some were very clear on general manager, but tended on some of them thinking it's unknown, or maybe it wasn't clear to me. And would that be a discussion point, a question answer point when we get there?
Yes, ma'am, that's exactly the kind of clarifications that you can ask during the presentation period. And what's important to remember about the presentations, and you saw in your materials, that is not a time for them to begin changing proposals or giving you new proposals. The presentation will be on the material they've submitted, and then you have complete reign to ask any clarifying questions, anything you didn't see. That's perfectly appropriate, but they will not be in here negotiating prices and changing things and offering different things. That's not what that's for. It is for them to present to you the proposal they have filed. And then
Okay.
you have the right to ask anything and everything you need to ask so that you fully understand that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, that helps. So that's a good question, Dr. Small. On 6, any further questions? So that was company experience and then on-site management experience. And then you get to the locally grown section, and then the attendance should be an easy scoring. Any further questions on how each category is scored? Vince, any points to
Basically, you know, every question or every scoring opportunity is covered in the proposal you received. So you have a section, each RFP, excuse me, each proposal received, you have a section dedicated to that question.
Gotcha.
So if you have any problem, find that, let me know. I'll get you with that.
Mr. Anderson, any thoughts on these categories or helpful tips for the committee?
No, I mean, I think, as you said, the part 2, there's, you know, the menus, you're gonna be given that points, 0, 7.5, 15 points, that is provided for you. And then the, what, you know, Vince is doing is the pricing, so, no, there's 5 points in reference to menu, which talks about the variety, so that's something you wanna look at in terms of the menus they've submitted. But in terms of the actual evaluation, that is something that you won't have to worry about, because that's being done by an outside source, and she'll be providing us with the points that I will then provide to you.
Thank you. On the menus, 2, part 1. He's gonna do this, we do this.
Yeah, part 1 is the 15 points based on the 2 menus that they submitted, and the rooms that the part you'll evaluate is the 5 points based on the you know, how you rank their variety that they present in their menus.
Can I ask for clarification on number 7? Just reading it, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but proposers plan to include local grown and raised food. When we are using the scoring guideline, is this a section where we are basing our score off the entire proposal, including the local grown food section? Or is it just based off of the local grown and raised food?
Vince?
Does that
Yeah,
make
I would say it's set up for a section in the RFP where
Yes.
they have presented that to you, their program.
Right, there's a section.
That's what scoring
So
is
that's
based
what,
on.
okay,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
All right, does the committee members feel good about what we're scoring in the categories we score?
Just to clarify, did anyone on number 8, did anyone not sign that in this complete proposal?
As far as 8 goes, Vince, each proposal was there and will be scored.
Correct.
Yeah,
All 7 will
That's
receive
right.
5 points.
yes.
Okay, that's
Yes.
what I thought, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay. Good question. Any other discussion points? Okay, so we went through the scoring. We have voted to hear from each vendor oral presentation. We have set the dates for next week. Vince will work on the times. We'll be available both of those days for the entire day.
Right, we'll start at 9 o'clock, but then I'll just
Okay, 9
notify
o'clock.
vendors as far as
Okay.
the lineup.
Okay. Mr. McGinnis, any other?
No, sir, if Indy, just one refresher, remember, please, no discussion among committee members, among yourselves outside of these notice meetings. But if you need to talk to Vince or Mr. Anderson, if you have a clarifying question or something, you're welcome to get information or support from the staff. Each of you can do that. That's not a problem. But just don't communicate among yourselves about anything to do with this process. And then next week, those meetings have been advertised. They'll be public meetings, and we will proceed to let you receive those presentations.
Okay, thank you on that. I failed to mention that Jason Driver, he's a principal at Shoal River. He is not here. He's traveling today, but he will be here on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week as well. So he understands. I know that was a fairly short meeting if we're going to wrap this up, but I'll say a few things here, and I'll give everybody another opportunity to ask any questions before we wrap it up. But we had said this on the pre-proposals. This is important to us. This is important to this school district. This is important to our families and our students, that we have a good working relationship with these vendors that come in, and we provide healthy meals for our students, breakfast and lunch. So I'm excited that we have the amount of companies that are interested in working with us and being here in the county. These companies are well established, and I'm excited about what I've seen so far. So we have our work cut out for us, but I think we'll have 2 good full days next week, and I look forward to hearing from the companies face to face. So, any additional comments or thoughts or questions before we adjourn? Steve, Cindy, Shannon, Vince?
Anybody bringing samples?
Right, yes.
No, we're not bringing.
Here, yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah. Ms. Perry, Mr. Small, Natasha, Mr. McGinnis, last words? Okay, I appreciate everybody, and we'll gather back up next week. And this meeting is adjourned.